Good afternoon, friends. I've seen so many impossible things happen in our world today, especially during these uncertain times of the pandemic. And we have, I believe, seen a lot of unusual things happen as well. And one of these unusual things that I would like to share with you as an introduction is the number of unusual births that has happened in our world in history and in our time today. I'm going to give you a few examples. A couple of years ago, a gal who was pregnant at 39 weeks decided to run the Chicago Marathon. Don't know how she got away with that. Maybe she got permission from her doctor to run. And the plans were that she would run the first half of that 32 mile race and then walk the rest of the half. Well, the thing is, she's 39 weeks pregnant and she manages to have run of the race, and about a few miles after, she begins to experience labor pains. So she and her husband managed to walk the rest of the race, only to go to the hospital right after. And so she gives birth to this healthy child. That's one example of unusual birth. Another example is one person named Amy Buck. She was in labor for 20 days, almost full term. So what happened? For about 3 weeks, she was in labor, and another unusual birth was a lady from India, 70 years old. She had never before had a child, and her name is Rajo Devi Lohan from India. And she's been married for many years, and she never had children, but she got one at 70 years of age. And then finally, for unusual births, is the largest child born. Or let me rephrase that: the largest child born to survive. No, again, I have to rephrase that: the largest child born to survive, and his mother who survived. Maybe a better way to see it. And that record comes from September in 1955. Someone from Italy gave birth to a baby boy weighing, get ready, 22 pounds, 8 ounces, 22 and a half pounds. Now you see how I have to revise this as we went with the story. But certainly, Jesus Christ holds the record for the most unusual birth. You'll see why in just a moment as we read this passage again from the passage of Isaiah. Jesus was born. His birth didn't simply provide the world with another birth. It provided the world with a hope because of who he would become and what he would do. It's been said that a person can survive without food for 40 days. He can survive for 3 days without water. He can survive 8 minutes without air, but not a single second without hope. When Jesus was born, hope came into the world. Let me explain that. Paul the Apostle in Galatians 4 said, when the fullness of time had come, when the fullness of time, let me repeat that. When the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of woman, born under the law. Galatians 4:4. It was just at the right time. So what does that mean? First of all, it was the right time spiritually. There was a hunger that was developing. It was, some historians say, it was at fever pitch just before Jesus was born. Jesus has always anticipated, long prayed for a deliverer and Messiah. Now that Rome had occupied their territory, Israel grew, they grew such a longing, a depth of longing for a Savior or a Messiah. Not only the Jews, but people of other religions, even the Roman religion, who weren't, had their own religious systems. They looked to Judaism for a coming deliverer, their monotheistic viewpoint. So it was also the right time culturally. For the first time since the Tower of Babel, the world was now unified with a single Greek language. You could go from India to Britain 2,000 years ago and share the same ideas in the same common, precise language. That was unprecedented at that time. Also, it was the first time politically. 2,000 years ago, Rome had taken over the world, the Roman Empire. And because Rome was a very oppressive regime that it just brought a unification of the world. Caesar Augustus imposed what he called the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, which means that for nearly 200 years, there was economic growth and cultural growth with military stability. During that time, there was almost no military conflicts whatsoever because of the Pax Romana, the time of peace. Not only that, Rome built a system around 250,000 miles of roads, and 50,000 of which came, many can still be seen today. People can now travel with their ideas and have military guards ensuring their safety along the way. So now the gospel is in the most precise language ever, under the most ideal circumstances ever, with people who are hungrier than ever, going to places more freely than ever. It was the fullness of time. And so Isaiah the prophet, in our passage today, Isaiah chapter 7, the prince of all the prophets, I call him because he is quoted more than any other prophet in the Old Testament. 21 different times he was quoted in the New Testament. Isaiah gives us a prediction 700 years before the birth of Christ. And here's what I want you to see from this passage that we have. When Jesus Christ was born, God was giving us three things. He was giving us a sign, He was giving us a son, and He was giving us a Savior. If we look back at Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14, therefore the Lord Himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. So the text tells us that the Lord will give us a sign Himself. The word sign means in Hebrew a signal, a mark, a token, or you can even translate it as a miracle. The Lord Himself will show you something, a miraculous token, a miraculous sign. I see the Old Testament prophecies of Jesus like road signs. By the way, there are hundreds of road signs that we see every day when we drive out on the roads. There's a road sign that's coming down the road, basically he's saying. And if you go see a picture of a restaurant or food or a gas station, you can see all the road signs on the highway, as I usually frequent Ottawa. Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, refers to this road sign of Isaiah. Matthew writes in chapter 1, for example, all of this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, that's Isaiah, saying, behold, the virgin shall be with child and bear a son, and they will call his name Emmanuel, which is translated God with us. Now, allow me to just unravel the context a little bit. I always like to help you guys be able to understand the context. That's why we can better understand. So maybe you might say to yourself, I know it's miraculous that a virgin birth, that in itself is a miraculous thing. And what's that got to do with Jesus being born in Bethlehem later on? So let me paint you a picture. Chapter 7 of Isaiah is about Isaiah the prophet approaching the king of Jerusalem, of Judea, which is, his name is Ahaz. Ahaz is worried that Isaiah comes to him. Why is he worried? Because there were three nations above him. They were bearing down on him politically, militarily. The first is the kingdom just north of Jerusalem. That is the kingdom of Israel under the leadership of a king by the name of Pekah. We're not going to read the whole chapter, it's mentioned here. So the kingdom of Israel, and above Israel, the kingdom of Syria, with the headquarters in Damascus. It was a problem now, it's a problem then. So then you have Israel and Syria both joining forces to fight an even bigger bully called Assyria. And so these two kingdoms have formed a coalition to fight against the Assyrians. And they asked Judea to help them in the coalition. It has said, no way, I don't want to fight the Assyrians. So these two guys say, fine, then we're just going to attack you then. So what King Ahaz is feeling, he's now panicking, and he sends a bribe to have them attack those two. Follow, so far. You take care of them, then I'll be fine. Well, then God sends Isaiah the prophet. And Isaiah says, don't worry about Israel, don't worry about Syria. They won't be a bother to you. In a couple of years, they won't even exist. Don't even worry about them. And then Isaiah is in the presence of the king. He says this, hey king, ask the Lord for a sign. Yeah, ask him. Go ask him for a sign. Any sign at all, in heaven, on earth, doesn't matter. The king asks and says, I'm not gonna test the Lord. I'm gonna ask the Lord. Now, what he really meant by that, because he sounded really pious. What he really meant was, I'm not gonna trust the Lord, because he already proved that he doesn't trust the Lord by sending money to the Assyrians in a bribe, and so that his problem will be taken care of. So he didn't trust God to take care of his problem. Instead, he does something humanly so that he will look after, so that his problems will be solved. So what he needed was a sign for the entire clan of David. The miraculous sign: a virgin will conceive and bear a son, and they will call his name Emmanuel. And then he walks out. So 700 years later, Matthew, in looking for the birth of this boy in Bethlehem, says that's the road sign that has happened in our recent days. This is that which was spoken of by the prophet. These are signs. God gave us a sign. So I don't know if you ever considered the signs that the prophecies of the Old Testament are to people in general. Evidently, God wanted to make sure that even people of different beliefs, different religions, and everybody has their own belief system, he wanted to know exactly who he was sending to the world. He would give them a sign in advance. So 700 years before the birth of Christ, he gave him a sign. See, even the prophet Micah, he predicts that Jesus will be born in Bethlehem 720 years before he was even born in Bethlehem. Josiah the prophet, he predicted that someone will arise from Egypt, from he will move from Egypt. So um, he he basically